On this episode, we chat with returning guest Frank Smith, a Khmer language teacher in California, who tells us what his yearly trip back to Southeast Asia gives him to take back and share with his students.
So get your New Year's resolution off to a great start by listening to this and every future episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee Pimai, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast and to 2018. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who escaped the cold in 2001 and is now freezing in the Bangkok winter.
And I am Educator, an American expat living full-time in Bangkok for 2 years now, I can finally say.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us here in the Big Mango.
So first, a very quick thank you to our patrons who help support the show. Among the cool rewards that they get is access to a weekly bonus show, which we record right before this show. And this week we talked about, we covered a lot of stuff this week. We talked about the New Year, we talked about Christmas, we talked about annoying children. What else did we talk about?
Bad audio equipment.
Yeah, bad audio equipment. We're having some technology problems here. Or it could just be a cable problem, we're not sure. But we talked about a lot of stuff, including financial domination and dominatrixes who force people to mine cryptocurrency for them, which was interesting. So, yeah, that was an interesting conversation. I learned a lot about Evo. So, if you'd like to join the ranks of our fine patrons and get bonus content, early access to shows, awesome swag, and perhaps learn a little bit about Evo like I did, just head over to patreon.com/Bangkok Podcast.
I think you might have that a little bit backwards. But nonetheless, speaking of support and also cryptocurrency's dominatrixes, we just added the ability to show your love with cryptocurrency for the Bangkok Podcast. So toss us a Litecoin, toss us a something else, a dash, a slash, a hash. What is it?
Dash
it is, yeah. Or even a Bitcoin or fractions thereof, whatever. We're not greedy. You can now do that on the website. It is simply BangkokPodcast.com/support.
Yeah, there's a button on the site also that used to say just become a patron. Now it says support the show. And if you click that, it'll take us to a page. You can still use Patreon to support the show. But like Evo said, there's also a cryptocurrency option there. And let's see if it works. Show some love and fingers crossed, because I ain't no cryptocurrency genius. But I think I set it up right. So some of you may have remembered on episode 2.26, we talked to educator Frank Smith, who teaches Khmer to students of Cambodian refugees in California. Well, Frank was recently in town, so we thought it would be interesting to see how his yearly visit to Southeast Asia colors his views on learning language, the changes he notices, and what types of stories he brings back to his students in the U.S. So let's go over to Frank and see what he has to say about his yearly trip back to his second home. All right, well, for this episode, we wanted to talk with a person who's already been a guest on the show previously, and you're back in town for your yearly trip back.
My yearly 6-week visit.
Yearly 6-week visit. We're talking to Frank Smith, who is a professor of Khmer.
Yes.
At UC Berkeley. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have you back in town. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me back again.
No worries.
I was kind of surprised that you asked me for a return visit.
We're the only ones. Are you the guest that doesn't get invited back for Thanksgiving?
No, I guess I haven't been interviewed like this before. Anyway, but you know.
Well, to set the scene, we're standing in Central World Mall in the middle of a renovating area, and it seems to be the only quiet area that we can really talk. If you listen to the show we did a few weeks ago, listeners, you'll remember that I recorded some ambient audio in this very mall and complained about how loud it was, so we found a little quiet spot where we could talk. But Frank, we wanted to get you back because I thought it was interesting that you are a professor, a linguistics professor, basically, in the States.
Yeah, just language teacher.
Language teacher, okay. Not necessarily a linguistics professor. But I wanted to talk about what it's like when you deal with this language all day, mostly Khmer, but also Thai, am I right?
Yeah, Thai is more a social language for me.
Okay.
I haven't really done any. I did some research using Thai a few years back, but I haven't done anything in terms of language instruction with it. Lao, yes. Lao and Khmer.
Okay. So what's it like for you coming back? What's it like for a non-native speaker who, I don't know how to say it, who teaches in that non-native tongue, coming back to be surrounded by this language and these languages? Is it a really different environment for you, or is it sort of like a bit of culture shock or language shock, I guess it would be?
It really isn't, especially for Khmer. I mean, Khmer never leaves me. I've been speaking it for 30 years, and it's a major focus of my daily life. You know, talking to students, and of course I have friends who I keep in touch with, and so it's not jarring at all to just plop down in Cambodia, and you know, and it really isn't for Thai either, because Thai actually, I would say on a daily basis I use Thai more than Khmer.
Daily basis in
the U.S.
In the U.S.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Because I have a lot of Thai friends, so a lot of chatting on Facebook, you know, written Thai. I call my girlfriend and my 4-year-old grandson twice a day on Skype.
Okay.
And so, and there's a fairly large Thai community in the Bay Area.
Right. Twice a day. Don't tell my mom that. She's happy with once a week. So, because when I go back to Canada or basically any other country where English is the majority of the spoken language, it always throws me off because I'm sitting on a bus or in a restaurant and I can understand what people around me are saying. I'm assuming that doesn't happen a lot in the U.S. with Khmer, but is there sort of like oh yeah, when you come back here, are you kind of looking around all the time going, I can understand what everyone's talking about here, but...
Yeah, not really. You know, it's been with Thai and Lao, it's been a good, 15, 16 years, so... There was a time when I, went through that, but
yeah.
Really, I just shift into Thai mode and that's it.
It's like riding a bike.
It really is, yeah. Also because it's really easy nowadays with this newfangled internet thing to keep up on stuff. I mean, there's and in terms of all the what the teenagers are saying, all the youth slang. I mean, it's all over Facebook, of course.
Right.
And if you want to take a little extra effort, to me, I spend so much time on Facebook that's like kind of right there. I don't even have to go out of my way. But if you want to make a little extra effort, you can watch streaming Thai TV live. Not that I do, but you could, if you're so inclined. And you can, when you hear about something like maybe hear about a music video that's the latest thing or that's inspired a new phrase that everyone's using, you can just go on YouTube and see that video.
Right. So do you do any research or do you use anything from your trips to bring back with you, or is it basically all available online?
It's pretty much, I've really switched to all digital. I still buy books when I go to Cambodia and Laos. Laos because I always want to, that's the language I have the least regular use of, so I want to keep up on stuff and update my textbooks. The nice thing about my textbooks is they're all digital, so that when I get new things, I could just update them whenever I want to. If I want to rewrite a chapter tomorrow, I just do it. And
right.
And then also in Cambodia, I buy books to give my students as prizes when we play language games and things like that.
Okay.
And we're about to get booted, I think.
Oh yeah, we're going to get booted out.
You're being approached from the rear.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh, that was it. It was your foot.
Evo, the rude bastard, had his foot up on the bench.
What do you know?
How dare you?
Wow, interesting.
How dare you?
We're good.
All right. Well, I thought we were going to be 2 for 2 getting kicked out.
That we're going to get to do a 60 minutes kind of thing, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you something about language acquisition. And some people have said this to me, is that when you're learning a language, for me, I'm constant struggle learning Thai, and that's pretty much all I focus on. But someone told me that when you're learning a language, learn as many languages as you can. Learn 2 or 3 at the same time. What are your thoughts on that?
I very much disagree with that.
You disagree with that?
I think that, it's okay to learn 2 languages at a time, but I think that for one of them, you need to have gotten to a pretty good... You need to have gotten to like a high intermediate or low advanced kind of status. Otherwise, there's just too much fighting that goes on in your head.
Really? The one I was told was that if you learn how to say car in Thai, road, then you can also make it. Oh, in Japanese, car is whatever it is, and also in Mandarin, it's whatever it is. I don't know, but
that may help for vocabulary acquisition, but just acquiring vocabulary is not speaking a language. I mean, you need to use it. And so, actually, if you have a situation where you're trying to learn several languages and you have regular social situations where you can use both of those languages, that might work. But in terms of like a classroom setting, any kind of focus study, I really we recommend this at the Language Institute where I used to teach at the University of Wisconsin. You don't try to study. Get good at one before you try to study another.
All right. That bodes well for me with only trying to learn one. I have an excuse to not try to learn another one.
Frank, a question about your current teaching gig because you're teaching Thai. Yes.
No, I'm teaching Khmer.
You're teaching.
Khmer only.
You're teaching Khmer.
And I write textbooks for Lao and Khmer, but I only teach Khmer.
So, who are your students that you are teaching at UC Berkeley?
My students are 98% or whatever the percentage is, children of Cambodian refugees who were born in the U.S. That's almost all my students. Once in a while, I'll get a non-Khmer person who wants to learn the language because they want to go and do missionary work, they want to go and do research, but it's very rare. When I used to teach in Wisconsin, we would have a lot, maybe like 50-50, some years 70-30 in favor of the Farangs who wanted to learn it for various purposes. But in California, it's all, we call them heritage students.
Heritage students.
So they grow up and they can speak basic, home Khmer. They can talk about food. They can talk about family. They can talk about, health and illness, basic things like that. But they don't know how to read and write. And their language is it's kind of very unpolished with a lot of slang, and they're not really suited for any kind of formal situation. So I teach them all that. I teach them the formal speaking, and then I teach them reading and writing.
So when you return, do they come up to you and say, "Hey, Frank, so what's going on back home? Give us a lowdown. What's the gossip?"
They generally don't, because they're not really, for the most part, socially invested in Cambodia.
Interesting.
So, and Khmer language had a kind of a weird thing happen to it. Well, it's not that weird, actually. When refugees went there, they started going in large numbers in the early 1980s. And so those people were speaking the way that people had spoken in Cambodia in the early 1970s, before the Khmer Rouge. And they pretty much kept that up. So Khmer language in the U.S., or Khmerican language, as we like to call it, is kind of frozen in the early 1970s. So, and of course, language is always changing. So in Cambodia, it's just, changed in all sorts of ways. But their parents are still stuck talking that 70s way, and that's what they learned. So they have interest in Cambodia, and some of them, get into the pop music and things like that. But they're not really itching to learn the latest slang or anything like that.
That's really interesting. So it would be someone speaking like jive, talking to someone who speaks modern English.
Not exactly.
Maybe not a direct parallel.
They do like certain things. Like they love me to when I show them Facebook memes from Cambodia and explain what they mean. They get a big kick out of that.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of trying to get the latest way of talking and using it themselves, when they go to Cambodia, and most of them do make regular trips to Cambodia, they're just concerned with being able to express, to a fairly subtle extent, their feelings and what they want to do. They just want to communicate without people laughing at them.
Right. I think that's what we all sort of aspire to.
Right.
Even with English.
Frank, you mentioned earlier that the Bay Area has a pretty sizable Thai community that you do interact with, at least on occasion. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about that and put some parameters for that? Like how big is big?
I really don't know how big it is, and it's very. Let's see. I don't want to step on anyone's toes here. It's a very kind of specific group based on. There's a publisher of Thai books who lives in the Bay Area, and she's kind of like the social maven of the Thai community, and she has a lot of parties, and so I've met a lot of people at her parties,
right?
And I met people through them, and so it's this kind of network, but it's not it's a very kind of, in a way, closed group. If I had a car, I would actually probably know a lot more people, interact with a lot more people, but I don't drive, and so I never basically get outside of Berkeley, and they're all driving distance from me, so I really. And she doesn't really have parties anymore. So I used to see them, a couple times a year at her parties, and now I don't. But I'm friends with a lot of them on Facebook, and we still chat and things like that.
Without getting either of us into any trouble, what do they talk about? And what do they talk about when they're thinking about what life is like back here in Thailand or Bangkok or wherever they happen to be from?
I mean, they deal with their lives there. A lot of them have opened Thai restaurants and things like that, and, are still involved in Thai culture in some way there. A lot of them are married Westerners. I think that there's their Thai community life there. They have, Western friends as well there. And then they're still very much in touch with their relatives and their life back in Thailand. So I think it's kind of compartmentalized from what I've seen.
Do you think they are... Would you consider them just expats in another country? Is that it? Or they really desperately want to be Thai and be back here in Thailand?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not that close enough with any of them to really know that, like, if they plan to come back here and retire. And, I mean, they're definitely, everyone that I've met is still strongly identifies as Thai. But, but they certainly, a lot of them speak English very well, and they've integrated into U.S. society very well.
Probably better than some of us for long have. Greg?
Probably.
It always comes back to my crappy language skills. You mentioned earlier something about how the language is sort of split between the Khmer stuck in the 70s and the Khmer in Cambodia being modern Khmer. That's a really fascinating topic. We could probably do a whole episode on that with a historian or linguist at some point, or maybe even you. But what kinds of things do you see in the Khmer spoken in Cambodia that you don't see in America? Are there any specifics?
Okay, well, here's an example. Like I said, because language is always evolving, it's always changing, and it's really hard to look at it objectively because you can become attached to certain things. Like, I don't know if you bristle at any ways that people speak English that maybe you didn't grow up with. So like, you damn kids, get off my lawn, kind of. Kind of. But so I try to be objective and accept it. But I also bristle at, like, the way the kids are spelling today. And
me too.
And I'm talking about in Khmer. I mean, also English. But yeah.
I'm only angry at one language for that.
So but I can give you one example. So when I learned from basically the generation of parents and grandparents of the kids I'm teaching now.
Right, okay.
So I learned Khmer from them in the late 1980s. And so they taught me the names of the months because the names of the months were very much in use in the 1970s in Cambodia. Well, it shifted to where people, whereas they still know the names of the months, they use numbers instead now.
Really?
Yeah. So it's much more common for people to identify months by the number than it is by the name, to the point where sometimes when I'm interacting with friends who have taught Khmer with me in the U.S. I mean, so these are teachers of Khmer. They're roughly my age, and I would say the name of the month to her because that's the way I'm used to doing it. That's how I learned, and she has to count her fingers to get to the.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's like, that's how far it's changed. And so, but if I were to meet any of my the parents or grandparents of my students in the U.S., I would definitely use the name of the month way of speaking to them, and that's what they would be comfortable with.
That's interesting. One of the things that always bugs me, one of the two biggest things that bug me here is when foreigners in Thailand say Pattaya.
Yeah.
It's Pattaya.
Yeah.
And even if they've been here for 30 years. And another one in this, I'll always fight against this, and I hear it a lot, is, oh, that guy, he walks the talk. And I'm like, no. It's walk the walk and talk the talk. And I've gotten into, like, long arguments with Thai people about that.
I've never heard that before. So is that something the Thais say?
Yeah, he walks the talk.
I've never heard that before.
Like, you can't walk the talk. You can't talk the walk. You can walk the walk and talk the talk.
I'll tell you my pet peeve is Farangs who have spent so much time speaking this kind of let's face it, a lot of it is Bar Girl Thai, Bar Girl English. So they have this certain way that they ape Thais speaking English. And they do it to the point where when you're alone with them, speaking to them, one native English speaker to the other, they'll use it. I just want to smack them. I'm sorry. It just annoys me so much. I mean, it annoys me enough to hear them speak that way to Thais. But to speak that way to me when there are no Thais around, it's like...
Hey, Frank, where you go?
Yeah, right. No, cannot. Like that's something they can do, something cannot.
So, yeah, I definitely have that in my family. My wife and I are always telling each other, no, cannot. No, no have. Yeah, we're just terrible humans that way. I apologize for that. Question for you: as you're walking around Bangkok, obviously Thailand borders Cambodia, and there are plenty of people who probably speak Khmer as their native language that are living or visiting in Thailand. Do you hear it as you're walking around or sitting in a restaurant? Do you hear the Khmer language?
Sure, I
spoken?
do. Yeah, I hear it, and I can tell right away whether they're visiting from Cambodia or whether they're Thai citizens who are ethnic Khmers.
Ah, okay.
And there's a whole bunch of those, and a lot of them are in Bangkok because they come from Buriram, Sisaket, and Surin, and they come here for jobs. And I know a lot of them. In fact, I went out of my way to learn how to be able to talk to them because their way of speaking Khmer is only about 40% intelligible to Cambodian Khmer and vice versa. So it was another project to have to learn how to communicate with them.
That's interesting because when I go out with my wife sometimes too, and I'm talking to a waiter or someone, and I say, "Don't they understand Thai?" And she's like, "They're not Thai. Can't you hear the difference?"
Right. Yeah.
And then I feel like an ass. How different or how similar are Thai and Khmer?
They're not related at all.
Not at all.
They have about 30% of the vocabulary. They share about 30% of their vocabulary, but that's due to social borrowing. So from a linguistic point of view, they didn't originate from the same ancestor language. They're from completely different language families. And so while the fact that they share so much vocabulary can help you initially in transferring from one to the other, it'll only get you so far. And also a lot of that vocabulary doesn't sound anything like doesn't sound alike between the two languages. While it's still the same word, they've changed the pronunciation.
Really? Okay.
And then once you get deeper into the language, when you get to the level of grammar, you'll find yourself, as I did when I first learned Thai after speaking Khmer for about 15 years, I would often say things backwards
Oh, yeah.
and have people laugh at me.
What I hate when I'm in a country other than Thailand and I automatically default to Thai. If I'm in like Vietnam or Austria,
Right,
I
yeah.
start speaking Thai to people because I think like, oh, they don't know. And
Yeah, that happens with the languages that I don't keep current. So Khmer, Lao, and Thai are current, and I can switch between them, and I very rarely get confused between them. But Vietnamese, which I used to speak to an okay level, if I go to Vietnam, Thai is just going to keep on creeping in because I don't use Vietnamese on a regular basis.
right. So on your yearly trips back to this region, what, linguistically speaking, what do you look forward to? What do you do to bone up? Or do you even bother with that at all? Or is it just purely a vacation?
No, I really don't. I mean, it is. Yeah, it's pretty much a vacation. Although I'm in Cambodia, I'm always on the lookout, for the latest slang or the whatever changes might have happened in the years since I've been away. In Thailand, I guess I do that in Thailand too, but it's not as concentrated because I just want to learn it here so I can use it and communicate.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend is really good at keeping me up on stuff because even though she's 51, she has a lot of friends who are in their 20s and 30s, and so she's always got a new slang phrase to teach me, and then
Right.
I go out and I use that, and it's fun.
I told my wife that I wanted to practice reading my Thai by looking at Thai newspapers, and she said it's actually not a very good way to do it because the Thai newspapers use a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah,
and
I would say reading Thai newspapers. So reading Khmer newspapers, you really only need to get to like 3 semesters worth, so to be intermediate level to be able to read Khmer newspapers. They're very straightforward.
Okay.
But for someone learning English to sit down and like read Time magazine, I mean, it is we don't notice it, but it is so full of colloquial constructions, and it's really, really hard. And Thai is the same, if not harder. And then those abbreviations, oh man, they kill you.
I was reading over my wife showed me her phone message, and she was gossiping to me about one of her friends on text, and she, I was looking for my name, and I said, no, I can't see where you're talking about me, and she said here, and it was the letter Pa Cha, which is the beginnings of Pa Puchai, which is man, and she was referring to me. It would be like,
okay. I would have thought Poor Chan, but
okay. Well, I might have gotten it incorrect, but
No,
it would be
that
the
works
equivalent
too.
of writing like MB for my boyfriend or MH or whatever. So when they start using those little shortcuts, how can you possibly learn by using that? So it sort of deflated my balloon a bit where, maybe I won't use newspapers to learn. I'll just
newspapers are still really tough for me in Thai.
really okay.
Yeah, because I just haven't learned all those abbreviations. It gets into a lot of political vocabulary that I don't know. That's my weak spot. I can have a great domestic argument in Thai, and certainly Khmer, and the fact that they share a lot of the fancy vocabulary, it helps me a lot. But the words that they use, like say to talk about politics, in Cambodia and Thailand are very different, and so. I definitely have weak areas like that.
Probably a good thing.
Probably, yeah.
I don't have an opinion, and even if I did have one, I couldn't express it.
Yep.
It's a good default position to have.
So, Frank, out of the 3 languages that you speak, 4 languages, let's go. You got Thai, the language of Cambodia, Khmer, Lao, which is Lao,
Yep.
and English. Which one is the most beautiful?
That's interesting. That's an interesting question. I guess I have the most affinity for Khmer just because I'm just so familiar with it, and I've been speaking it so long. But I know that it grates on a lot of people's ears when they hear it. But I also think Cantonese sounds more beautiful than Mandarin. So maybe I have a strange ear. But I would have to say Khmer, then Lao, and then Thai.
And which one's more fun to cuss someone out in?
I'd say they're pretty equally.
Yeah, they're all fun. You switch back and forth.
Although
depending on who the person is.
I don't.
You're a very nice person.
that's that's a good thing to keep in mind for Farang. Sometimes who don't know a lot of Thai. If you just know Thai swear words, you can entertain people, but you're also turning a lot of people off.
Yeah, it's probably true.
And a lot of times you may know the word and you know it gets a laugh, but you don't realize the full power of it, and it could someday, maybe in a karaoke establishment, where get you into trouble.
Yeah, there's a few words that I know what they are and I know what they mean, and I bury them deep down. Well, Frank, we just got walked up to by a security guard, a very friendly guy, actually, and asked what we were doing. And I said, we're just interviewing my friend about languages. And he pulled out his phone, and that seemed to satiate him for the moment, but he might be back. So let's wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Coming into the city from where you live outside of the city when you're here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. So I hope you have a great trip, and I hope you bring back some cool new slang words for your kids, whether it's traipsing around the countryside in Cambodia or talking to waiters in Bangkok.
Yep. Okay, well,
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, good to see you again.
Okay.
So great conversation, even though we did get kicked out there at the end. I enjoyed getting a chance to meet someone like Frank in person. You've known the guy for a long time, and it was a great time for me to get to know him as well. And also, Greg, thanks for showing us that really weird hidden police department canteen we ate at. That was fun.
Yeah, that was neat. Right across from the street from Central World, there's the country's main police headquarters, and if you walk to the back of the buildings, there is the police canteen, which is, well, not surprisingly, full of policemen, and they've got some pretty surprisingly good food back there. Just a regular little Thai court, but I got to say, regular little Thai food court, but I got to say they have the best yum pladuk phu, which is the fried shredded catfish that I've had in the entire country. So I like going over there from time to time from work. So yeah, that was actually the first time I'd met Frank too, and I wasn't expecting him to be so tall.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was your first time. I thought you guys went back a long time, but no, yep, tall, big guy, and great stories to tell. And as you said, fantastic catfish. So thanks for treating us to that as well, Gregory. But now we move away from the language and bring into time. That was the worst segue ever. Everyone's favorite segment of the show, Love, Loathe, or Leave, where we look at one minor aspect of living in Bangkok and find out if it's something the two of us love about living in Bangkok, something we loathe about expat life, or if it's something we hate so much it just might cause us to leave Thailand. This week, Greg, you have the honors.
I do, and it's not really a specific topic. Well, I guess it is, but it's hard to pin down. But I want to ask you what you think about the drinking water situation in Bangkok. Like, you basically are told not to drink water from the tap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use the tap water to brush my teeth. Mm-hmm. I use it to make tea. I use it to cook with. And I do drink a little bit sometimes when it's too inconvenient or I'm too bored to go all the way to the refrigerator to get a bottle of water. But you don't realize how much of a pain in the ass it is, really, until you go back home and you realize that, I can just go to the faucet and get fresh, filtered, clean water. Right.
So you can trust the water that's coming out of the tap because you live in Canada and I don't live in Flint, Michigan, when we're back in America, in our home countries, I should say, and we have good filtration systems. Not so much here in Thailand. Yes, you certainly do. I certainly do miss that. It's a pain, as you say.
Yeah, I've been gone so long that I don't really miss it. But like I said, when I go, that's one of the reverse culture shock things I experience. When I do go back home, I get really excited about it. Hey guys, look what I'm doing. I'm drinking out of the faucet. And everyone's looked at me like, yeah, that's what everyone does. But
I loathe it. I'll use the word
Yeah.
loathe. I loathe the fact that I can't trust the tap water here in Bangkok or anywhere in Thailand. But I will have to say, since I spent a year traveling before I came to Bangkok, and that's the way it was almost everywhere. We went across Europe, and it was like, do not drink the water in Spain.
Really?
You are a crazy person if you drink the water in Spain. So we didn't do that. So everywhere we went, it was the same way. Because, and also, the second reason we did that is when you travel somewhere new, even though we have great filtration systems in America and in Canada and theoretically in Thailand, but we have the pipes they have to go through. It doesn't matter how great the filtration system is, there are still microbes in the water,
Right.
and your gut flora has been attuned to the Bangkok gut, the microbes in Bangkok water. So if you go to a different country where they have a different set of microbes in the water, you can definitely get sick, even though no one else is going to get it. So you would probably be fine drinking from Thailand's water. You're not going to get the cesium-19 out of it. Obviously, that's a different thing altogether. But I don't think the microbes have hurt you all that much since you've been here for 16 years.
Yeah, I loathe it too. But like you said, maybe people in the Western countries often just don't really understand how much of a first world luxury it is to have water coming fresh out of the tap that you can drink without worrying about it at all. So yeah, I loathe it, but you get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I make my probably every 10-day pilgrimage down to the basement and fill up my 5 water containers at the machine that dispenses theoretically filtered water that I cart back up 18 floors to my condo. And that's, again, about every 10 days, I have to do that. And that's it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. We should also say there's an unfortunate side effect of this is that a lot of people, my mother-in-law included, insists on drinking out of individual drinking bottles of water. So we've got a garbage bag full of little plastic water bottles at the end of every month, and I hate it, but that's what she wants to do, and I can't talk her out of that because she's set in her ways. And but it would be so much easier if you could just turn on the tap.
See, I just wrap my lips around that big water container, just drink straight from it.
Nice.
Just tilt
that
it
must
up
happen
and
to me if you live alone with your wife, but I don't.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Anyhow, but hey, so both loathing on that one there. Really what I want to talk about is the huge race war we have started on Spotify, Greg.
Now, I saw you wrote this in the show notes that we share, but I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm really curious what the hell's going on.
So Spotify is a brand new avenue open up to podcasters. It's 100 million average monthly users a month, and now the Bangkok podcast is on Spotify. So if you've been struggling through whatever other app you use, and trust me, I understand your struggles, or if your friends say, I don't use the podcasting thing, but they all use Spotify, that's awesome. But let's talk about the race war that's going on. I get some stats on exactly what's happening. And right now, it looks like it's the Americans versus the Australians on Spotify. They're neck and neck right now.
Really?
Neck and neck. The split between Americans and Australians are it's a small number of people between the two that are different. And then Germany comes in a close third behind them, which is weird because most of our audience is either in North America or in Thailand that download our show from other platforms. But on Spotify, the Thais are not using the platform.
Oh, God. I got to let out a sigh of relief. You said race war. I thought people were like, what are these two white idiots doing talking about Thailand? I thought they were fighting back and forth.
No,
but you're just talking about who likes us the best.
Exactly.
Well,
See, I'm trying to start a race war is really what this is. I'm saying
that's always good.
Australians, I think my Aussie friends out there, come on, take out the Americans. Just a few more. Tell your friends to subscribe to the show on Spotify. Follow us there, and you can beat them out. Here, also, coming up, we had the Germans, I said. Then we have the Swedes, then the Danes, then the Brits, then the Norwegians. The Ouijas? Yeah, the Ouijas. And absolutely, Greg, 0 Canadian listeners.
Sons of bitches. I got to get on the horn and call a couple of my friends up. Hey, get on that Spotify.
I think that would be a good idea.
It is winter in Canada, though. Maybe the transmission tubes have broken or something like that. Frozen right through.
Quite possible. But anyhow, that's the Spotify news. If you're not listening to us on Spotify, fine. You're listening to us somewhere. I really don't care where. But for your friends who don't understand the podcastings, then go to Spotify. Here's a better trick. If your friend leaves his or her phone on the table unlocked, just go ahead and launch Spotify, search Bangkok Podcast, and just go ahead and follow. That'd be great. I'd appreciate that.
Cool. Well, no matter how you listen to the show, we want to say thank you for listening in any format. And if you have something on your mind, or you just want to drop us a line to say hello or tell us your preferred way to listen to the show, sure, why not? Please just head over to bangkokpodcast.com and send us a message via the contact page. Or you can reach out directly to me on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg.
or you can send us a message on Facebook, Twitter, or Line. We're at Bangkok Podcast in most places. And we're both very good at responding to your comments, your questions, and liking when you throw heaps of praise onto us. So thanks very much for doing that. For Greg Jorgensen, I am Evo Terra. Happy New Year. We'll be back next week with more stories of our lives lived in the City of Angels right here on the Bangkok Podcast. Chok Ti Krap.